Alright, so for what we have done is, we have created a repository. The repository is ready, and we are planning to deploy the repository. So as I said, in a three-step process, creation of the repository, the first step is done. This is the first step. The second step is deploy repository. Third is create reports. Right, so we have created a very simple repository uh, with the help of administration tool. So we have used administration tool, and using the administration tool we have built the repository. Right, so I've just started my server. So meanwhile the server gets started, I would like to reopen the repository that we have developed yesterday. So again, to create the repository or open the repository or modify the repository, we have to use the same tool, which is an administration tool. Right, so this is our administration tool which we are actually using. So this is our OBIEE administration, and so the first link is new, right? It is for to create a repository, and this is to open a repository. So I'm going to open a repository. The yellow one, it shows as it's an offline. So I'll explain you what is an offline, and there is something called an online. So we'll see later point of time what is the difference between offline and the online. But again, we'll start with offline now, because offline is something which is not configured on the server. It's like in the standalone kind of stuff. So a repository which is not bound to any server, or we call it as a offline. So since we created a repository and we have not deployed it yet, we can open it in the offline mode. So I say offline. Now it is pointing me to the repository location. So how do I navigate to this location is something that we can see at a later point of time. How do I know the path and all the stuff? So you don't need to by heart, but we'll do a simple exercise to understand the folder structure and how does it really look like. So now in the repository folder, there are multiple repositories available. Okay, so now the latest repository that we created is sales repo 001. If you look at it here, it was created on 15th, which is yesterday. And if I see here, the size of the repository is a 7 KB. So too small, right? Because as I told you, the repository will not have any data. It's only a structure. So since it's only importing the structures, it will only create a repository with the minimal size, which is 7 KB. Okay. Sales repo 001. I say open. Now when I open the repository, obviously the repository is protected by a password. So I need to provide the password to open the repository. Remember, we have given the password, which is a welcome one. Okay, if you forget the password, then you will not be able to open the repository. It's gone unless you contact Oracle for some solution where they'll give you some script kind of stuff. But otherwise, if you forget the repository, nobody will be able to open the repository. There's nothing called owner or administrator. Nobody, because repository is kind of whoever creates the repository, right? He is the one who sets the password to the repository. So there is nothing like an administrator or somebody who unlocks the repository in case you forget it. Nothing. Okay, make sure that when you're giving the repository, if you think like tomorrow if you go to the office and you're creating a repository, make sure that you cannot give welcome one because it's a simple password. But if you give some other password, you need to make sure that you make a note of it somewhere. I don't know. So that's very important. So I open the repository. So if I open the repository, I can see as it is what I did create yesterday. So this is a physical layer where I have all my 3 tables that is required, and this is my BMM layer where I created my multi-dimensional model with a combination of fact and the dimension. So the objective of this model is I would like to analyze my revenue. I would like to analyze my revenue with respect to my products in the offices. So just imagine a real world. I would like to understand, suppose if assume there is a store, okay, or there is a small retail business. As- So now what do they want to do? They want to understand their revenues with respect to the different products. So what product is selling good, what product is not selling good, what kind of revenues they are making on each product, what category is working good, what brand is working good. So they want to understand those kind of things, which means they want to understand their revenues with respect to their products, where the revenues is a fact which you are having measures or calculations, saying revenue, profit, margin. Those are the facts are measures that we keep it in our revenue folder, which is a fact. Okay, this is a product where which we would like to analyze with respect to. So this is the dimension is a perspective. From what perspective you want to see, from what direction you want to see. So it's kind of fact and dimension is a combination where you analyze a number with respect to a fact, or with respect to a dimension, with respect to a description. That's what we do in our real life, right? So we try to understand and measure a number with respect to a description. Suppose say I want to understand my expense, and so expense is a fact, and where probably expense on food is basically the food is one dimension where where you're trying to create a dimension where it captures the some descriptive information. Food, within the food, what type of food, like you're buying ready-made food or you're buying uh, you're preparing yourself. So you can create a dimension in a way that if you would like to understand really like what kind of food you're eating and where you're spending money. Are you spending money in preparation? Are you spending money in eating out? So those kind of things, if you capture somewhere in a dimension, you can analyze that information with respect to, I mean, again, as the fact. Right. So anyway, so we'll discuss more on that. So my business model BMM layer, which is a multi-dimensional model, which we actually capture all those combination of a fact and dimension. Now again, as I said in a presentation layer is where we present our data to the business user. So there is a different set of business users within the business. Maybe I may have a lot of business users or sales managers, and but again they belong to the different departments. They belong to the different group. They belong to the different region. So I mean, they have a lot of hierarchy, right? So there are managers, there are low-level managers, high-level managers, CTO, CEO. So I mean, in an organization there are multiple people. I cannot let everybody access the same thing, right? Suppose say if my CEO is accessing some report, I don't want a normal floor-level manager should be able to access the same report because it's a security. So I need to present the data. So I need to kind of be very sure on what I'm presenting, how I'm presenting. So my presentation layer will plays a very important role in identifying what can see what, who can see what. Okay. So now, so when our repository development is done and we save the repository, once we save the repository, it did a consistency check. What does a consistency check means? It will verify if our repository is created with a kind of good standard, so there is no issues, no errors in the repository. So once our so the server is running now, so it's in a running mode. Server started in running mode is what I have to see. And apart from that, if in case if my Oracle process manager is not started, I go to my Windows services and I see if my Oracle process manager service is started. Fortunately, it's not started yet. If it is not started, I have to start it. I mean, I have two services, but you'll have only one. I mean, why I have two services? Because I uninstalled and installed by mistake. The service is not got deleted in the uninstallation process. Since there is a service name with instance one already there, it has created a new service name instance 2. That's it. But you see only one service, which is a instance 1 only. Right. So now what we need to do is we need to deploy the repository. So to deploy the repository, we need to go to our browser. So as I told you, like the deployment of the repository and the creation of the reports, both are a cloud, which is you do these two operations with the help of a browser. So now when I have to do the operation with the help of the browser, what do I need to do? I need to remember the URL. I need to remember the URL, right? So obviously, if I have to check my email in Google, so I need to remember, right? mail.google.com, or yeah, mail.yahoo.com. So without the URL, if I give a system and a browser, would you be able to access? No. So you need to know the URL. So that is something that you need to remember. There's nothing called like a Windows. You don't have any shortcuts. Nothing. You cannot expect the enterprise manager link has to be available in Oracle Business Intelligence. What do you say? Menu, Windows kind of start menu. No, you don't see enterprise manager link, or you don't see analytics link for the reporting. Nothing. So it's a browser. So it's assumed that you remember. Okay. So now what is the URL that we actually use for our enterprise manager? So as I told you, for the enterprise manager, the URL will be http://localhost or your computer name, whatever the server that your OBIEE is running. So in real time, obviously this is the name of the server where you have OBIEE installed. Okay, and the port on which port the OBIEE is running actually. Okay, so 7001 is the default port, but again in real time we don't use 7001 as default because it's prone to kind of a security threat. So probably in your systems you use it, but whatever the port that is, you use the port where it is running, and the /em. /em is the context and which is a constant across whatever the server may be, whatever the port may be, but the /em doesn't change. Okay, so that's how you need to remember. Uh, so all you have to ask is like in what server it is running and what port it is running, and rest of the things will be the same. So you usually don't ask the URLs, you ask the servers and the ports, so that you can frame your own URL. Okay, and as usual, as I said, this is create reports is similar to the same. So localhost colon 7001. This is also running on 7001, but the link, I mean, the context is different. So this is analytics. If I use a /analytics, it will open the reporting. Remember, it's like yahoo.com/finance. I mean, www.yahoo.com/finance. If you give in the web page, what happens? It will open the finance page. If I say yahoo.com/horoscope or astrology, it will open the astrology page. Same, it's kind of executing a particular application or executing a particular page, right? The same way here, if I say /em, it is actually executing the enterprise manager application. So now I have my browser open. I go here, http://localhost 701/7001/em, which is my enterprise manager. If I say enter, so what is that we are accessing? We are accessing an enterprise manager that is deployed onto our WebLogic server. So within the WebLogic server, there is a enterprise manager deployed. So we'll be accessing that particular application. Yeah, just give me a minute. Can you hear me now? Yeah, sorry. I mean, I think there was a net issue. Okay, so I'm gonna access my URL. localhost 7001/m, which is an enterprise manager, which I'm actually accessing the enterprise manager. Right. So for the enterprise manager, I said the user is always WebLogic. So this is the user that we um, create at the time of installation. So when we are installing, right, so by default there is a user WebLogic created. We'll be using the same user. So the user is WebLogic and the password is welcome1. I say login. Right. So this is enterprise manager, and within the enterprise manager, you go to the business intelligence, and within the business intelligence, you have the core application. Enterprise manager, business intelligence. Within the business intelligence, you have the core application. So one thing probably that you can refer it for a later thing. And enterprise manager is the common management and monitoring tool across the Fusion middleware. So whether you use the SOA, whether you use Identity Manager, whether you use a Web Center, whether you use any of the Fusion software, Oracle Fusion software. Oracle Fusion, just to kind of recollect, it's a group of Oracle products which follows a common framework like a Microsoft Office, so which follows a common framework, right? So the same way, I mean, in Microsoft Office, everything looks similar, though there are different products. The look and feel is the same. Clipboards and the menus and everything are shared, right? Across, you see, every application will have this similar kind of menu. Same way here, even within Oracle Fusion, all the different enterprise applications will look or will follow the same architecture. So there, you have a common monitoring tool or management tool, which is called an enterprise manager. Okay. Now, so if you see here, once you go to the enterprise manager, so this is all about your business intelligence. So these are all the configuration, right? What are the configurations that you can do? Suppose it is availability or capacity management or diagnostics, security, any of these tabs, right? So all these configurations are specific to your OBIEE. Okay. Now, so if you look at the deployment, and there is a deployment of the repository. So if you see here, this is the repository that you already currently deployed. So this is the repository that is currently deployed. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to deploy our new repository. So our repository is what? Sales repo underscore 001. Okay, so but if I look at here, everything is kind of no, I cannot edit. It's a read only, right? Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to deploy my repository. So if I have to deploy my repository, I should be able to access this browser somehow. So if you look at here, there is something called lock and edit configuration. So what happens here is, if I click on lock and edit configuration, it will enable this options for me. The reason is, um, we don't really want to have more than one people be deploying the repository at the same time. So which means I'm making a lock, which is so lock and edit configuration means I'm making a lock and modifying the configuration, which means meanwhile while I'm doing my deployment, nobody could deploy the same time because it's locked to me. That's the one thing. The second thing is lock is basically it's a record of your configuration. Suppose say now when I make a lock and I do 10 changes across the different tabs, and I can deploy all these 10 changes in one go. I can deploy all these changes in one go by either activating the changes, or I can withdraw all these 10 changes or roll back all these 10 changes by doing a withdraw kind of stuff. So now let's do a lock on this so that we'll be able to deploy our repository. So if I click on a lock and edit configuration, I would be able to edit my changes. So lock and edit configuration completed successfully. Now if you look at here, so I have an option upload BI server repository where I can select my repository and upload. So all I need to do is I need to simply say browse. So when I say browse, it is automatically taking me to the repository location because this is the last user location. It will automatically take you there. Otherwise, you can remember the repository. Look, I told you, like, just make a note in Notepad or copy it into the Notepad. So the repository that we would like to deploy is what? Sales repo underscore 001. So which is of 7 KB. Perfect. So select this repository and say open. So I have opened this repository and I need to give the password for this repository. So what is the password of the repository? Remember, what is the password that we are given? Welcome one. So why do I really need a password here? See, in the runtime, BA server or OBIEE server will also open and read this repository. So anybody, whether it is a human or a process, if somebody has to access this repository, they have to open the repository. So obviously when they have to open the repository, they have to provide a password. So that is the reason we need to give the password, so that when my server is actually reading this repository file, it will present the password to the repository and then it will open. Suppose if you give the wrong password, it will take it here. I mean, it won't say that it's a wrong password, so it doesn't actually validate the password here. Whatever the password that you give, it will take. But when you restart the server, it will fail because the server will not be able to open the repository and it will fail, saying invalid password or something. So you have to be a little careful here. So because there is no validation process available as part of the deployment, but the validation is done once the server start using the repository. So I give my password as welcome one, and my confirmation password is also welcome one. So I need to provide the same password which I created at the time of repository creation. So now if I selected the repository and the password, so all I need to do is I need to say apply. So apply is basically, it's a local apply. So for this particular tab, if I say apply, which means this configuration is recorded in the sense, so you can think it as a session. So we opened a session and we are doing one change now. If I say apply, see, this has been changed. So default RPD sales rep underscore 001, it will create a counter automatically. So this is the repository. So which means your changes to this particular screen is saved. Now I can go to a different screen, I can do some other change. I can go to a different screen, I can do some other change. So all these changes are recorded as a session. Now, so your changes are recorded here. Now you have an option, you have two options. Either you can activate your changes or release your configuration. So what does it mean by release configuration? Suppose say you're doing some configuration changes, like you have done 4 configurations, 5 configurations, 10 configurations across the different tabs, right? But at some point of time you realize, okay, no, these configurations is not going to work, and let's not do it, and we'll discuss internally in the team, and we'll come up with best configurations. I think it's not the time we go with the configuration. Let's not use these configurations. Now I don't need to go back to all the tabs and verify where I have done all the 10 configurations and put it back to the normal. I don't need to do. So all I have to do is simply say release configuration, which means whatever that you have recorded in this session will be simply ignored, and whatever the actual configuration, when you have locked, right, whatever the previous configuration, that will continue to use. So that is the release configuration, where you can undo the configurations so far what you have done, undo the configuration so far what you have done within the session. Suppose say you're happy with your changes and you would like to go ahead and proceed and apply these configuration to the server. You would like to apply the configurations to the server, and obviously what you do is you do the activate changes. So which means the changes will be activated. So the changes will be modified and applied to the server. So now we deployed our repository, and we would like the server know that we deployed the repository. So we would like to activate our changes so that this will be recorded in the configurations. So activate changes. Right, so activate changes will take little time. So what exactly activate changes is doing internally? So activate changes is modifying a few configuration files with the configuration that you have done. So there are a few configuration files that is available as part of OBIEE, which will go in detail at a later point of time. If I say activate, what exactly it does and what files it will change is something that we'll see. But for now, what we need to assume is, the activate will modify certain files inside the OBIEE so that, these files are updated with the new configurations. Okay. So now when I say activate is completed, it will ask you for the restart to apply recent changes, which means whenever you activate your changes, you have to restart your OBIEE server. So whenever you deploy a repository, you have to restart your OBIEE server. So this is a little weird, but as you have to do it because it has a certain limitation. I don't say limitation. It's the server architecture is defined that way. So this is a BI server which is being used internally as part of OBIEE, which is a pretty old kind of legacy server kind of stuff, where um, it has its own process like in a configuration file process, so which we were used to use in a traditional application. But again, after WebLogic and all these applications, you don't really need to do all those things. But yeah, since BA server is based on a configuration file mechanism, the moment you change the configuration, the server is not going to identify the configuration automatically on its own. So you need to restart the server. So that for the server, there are some initialization files available. And when you restart the server, what happens? The server will get started with the updated configuration. So simple. When we deploy, what we do, we update the configuration files with our new changes, our new intentions. Okay. So now we updated the configuration by activating the changes. Perfectly fine. Now, how does my server know that I've modified my changes? I need to restart. Why? Because when I restart the server, my server will read the configuration files again, because the server will only read the configurations at the initialization, at the startup only. Once you start the server, it doesn't really bother about the configurations again. Next time you start the server, then again it will read the configuration. So that's the reason, since we have modified our configurations, our server needs to be restarted, so that when it is starting, it will read the configuration file and it will start the server with the new configuration. So in our case, we have configured a new repository. When I start the server, what happens? It will start the server with the new configuration, which is nothing but the new repository. So whatever the repository that we have deployed, right, the server will load that repository into it. So then we can use the repository and we can create the reports. So how do I restart the server? I can simply click on restart to apply recent changes. So it's a cloud-based one. You can restart the server from a browser itself. So it's a beautiful thing. You don't even need to go to log into the server and type commands and all. You don't need to do. So you can do it from the browser itself. Internally, it will send the commands to the server. But again, yes, it's a little bit time-taking process. It's not as quick as you go and you can run it in the command line. It's a little time-taking process, but fine. I mean, to start with, we'll do from the browser, but I'll show you how do we do it from the command line, and where do we actually do all this stop and start kind of stuff. So I say restart. Right, so are you sure you want to restart the BI components? Yes. See, yeah, it's a little bit time-taking process. It depends on your system speed as well. But yes, definitely it takes a bit of time. You can also do it from the command line, which I'll tell you later. That is much faster and quicker. It's a matter of a few seconds. Right? Restart completed. Okay, your server is restarted. Perfect. And all of them are running. So if you look at the availability, all the 6 servers are running. So I'll come back to you. I'll explain you what are the 6 servers. But again, when you restart it, if your repository is not good, when I say not good, it is not consistent. There are some issues in the repository where when you're developing itself and you do the consistency check, it has shown some errors, but you ignored and you still deployed it, or you're given the wrong password. Okay, so for any of these reasons, if my server is finding it difficult to restart, if everything goes fine, then only the server will be able to start. If when it is loading the repository, right, when it is starting, it will load the repository. Before loading the repository, what it will do, it will validate the repository. The same process that we did consistency, right? We did it manually on our own, but the server itself will do it. So the server will start only when the repository is server will start only when the repository is consistent. That is the reason. Don't think that okay, let's not worry about this error and I'm not able to fix this one. Let's deploy. Uh, don't bother about this error. Let's deploy it and see if rest of the features are working or not. No, it doesn't work. Okay, so you have to fix the error, then only you will be able to deploy the repository. Like any other program, right? If you write a C program or Java program, you compile it, you see an error, you run it. Does it work? No. What happens? It gives the same error again, because when you're running, it will verify, it will compile, and it will run, right? So I mean, it won't compile, but again, it gets to know that there is an error, there's a compilation issues, so internally. Okay. So now anyway, so we have developed the repository and the deployment is also done. So happy now. And if I go and look at the deployment location, and we have the repository, which is our sales repo 001 BI 0056. If you need to understand one thing here, when I deploy the repository, a copy of the repository is created. In the sense, if I create X and if I deploy X, the X is not used directly. So the server is not going to X. What it will do, it will create a new copy of the repository X underscore so and so so and so. So a new copy of the repository is created. Okay, very good question. So if the server is uh, kind of having issues, is not able to restart, because we realize that there is an issue with the repository. So now you can go back to Enterprise Manager. Same thing. I mean, okay, here there are two things here. Okay, the WebLogic server is different, and the server that is actually using. I need to explain you this thing. This is very important. But again, yes, you'll understand over a period of time. So there are two set of servers, if you remember, like in our OBIEE. So one is our WebLogic server, where what do we have in the WebLogic server? In our WebLogic server, we'll have applications deployed. What is applications deployed? We have Enterprise Manager, we have analytics, so and so. Okay, we have console. So this is the WebLogic server where we have all our web applications that is deployed, which we are interfacing. So we interface the user with the WebLogic. Where now the actual core server, the working server. Okay, this is our BI server, our business intelligence server, our OBIEE server. So I told you like there are 5-6 servers. Those servers I can say instance. This is the instance. So now the instance will actually have the our BA server, right? So now when I am deploying the repository, where is my repository is deployed? Actually, my repository is deployed into the server. My repository is deployed into the BA server. Now, when my repository is deployed into the BA server, what is I'm restarting? I'm restarting this BA server. So now, suppose say I deployed something, it has modified x.config. Assuming, I mean, I'm just giving an example. It has modified x.config with a repository ABC, assuming, right? So I deployed a repository ABC, and the server configuration x.config is updated with the new repository. Now I restarted the server. So when I restarted the server, I'm not restarting this WebLogic server, because in the WebLogic server, I'm restarting another server. Makes sense, right? Because when I'm here, when I say restart, am I restarting this server? It makes no sense, because I cannot restart the server which I'm in. So I'm not restarting this WebLogic server, where I'm restarting the other server that is running, which is my BA server. So which I can access from my WebLogic. So I'm from the Enterprise Manager, I'm sending a command restart. This server is getting restarted. Suppose say I realize the server is not starting, because I know that it could be a password issue or it could be a repository issue. So now I can go back and open the repository again from the offline mode, and open the repository and do a consistency check, and verify the password it is working or not. So all those things, preliminary check, and I can deploy that repository again. Suppose if there is any issues which I ignored, and I fix those issues, and if everything is fixed, then I deploy the repository again. So now if this server fails to start, it doesn't mean that it's got nothing to do with this guy. So this server is still running. So what I can do, I can go to my Enterprise Manager again, and I can unlock the screen. So then I select a new repository which I want to deploy. I deploy that repository. I give the username, I give the password again. I say apply, activate the changes, and restart the server. Now my x.config is updated again with the new repository. X.config is updated again with the new repository. So this time, suppose say if my repository is bi0056. Now next time when I deploy, a new repository is created, bi0057, which my server will use inside the configuration file. So now my x.config is going to use a repository bi0057. Now when I restart the server, what happens? It will load the new repository and new configuration. And if everything is good, my server will start. So something like that. Or you can go to the log files. I'll show you. I mean, eventually we go to the kind of a configuration file, log file level, to understand what is the server actually doing. So maybe it's too early for us to go in that level. But again, yes. So when you deploy a new repository, when you restart the server, now my server will load the new repository, and if there are no errors this time, server will start properly. So that's how, if there is any errors, we have to follow the same cycle of the deployment again, by fixing the repository issues, or at least by identifying what is the root cause. If you go to the log file of the server, and it will clearly tell you why it is actually not able to start. So then you fix that issue, and restart it again or redeploy it again. So suppose if the issue is not with the repository, the repository is good, everything is good, but again it's not starting because of some XYZ reason. If you think the reason is not the deployment, you don't need to redeploy it again. You go and fix that issue and restart the server. So you can do this way. You can go and you can restart your instance. This is what you are actually restarting, instance. So you can restart instance from here. So there are different ways and different approaches that we follow. But again, yeah, we'll start with the basic, and as we progress, we'll see the different options as well. Okay. Now, so my repository is developed and the repository is deployed. So the second step is also done. Okay. So now the third step is create the reports using the same repository. So now the moment I deploy the repository, my content, whatever that I built, which is a metadata. So now you need to understand. So of course, now I'm developing and deploying and reporting how they are linked to each other. So whatever the repository I've developed, I deploy the same repository, right? So whatever the repository they deploy, I do the reporting on the same repository. So it's kind of, you develop, you deploy the same thing and do the reporting on the same repository. Okay, so now whatever that you develop in the repository, like in the calculations and everything, that will be available in your reporting where you can do the reporting. So one thing that you need to remember is in the reporting you would be able to see only the presentation layer. So when you're doing the reporting, right, you can see the only presentation layer, but these two are not available. You cannot see them. You cannot see them how they are built. And suppose if I build like an east, west, north, south. So I've built four subject areas where I can treat them as a different business subjects, assuming. Now I don't really know how these are built. I mean, the technical aspect of this is not actually shown to the users. Only we will be able to see this one in the reporting. And again, if you have to go back and do something, you have to come back to the repository and modify. Otherwise, this is only the part presentation layer is the only the layer or only the subject areas that we can see in our reporting. So that is the reason what I'm saying is whatever that you have here doesn't matter. So whatever that you present, only you can see that. So maybe I may have a lot of tables, like I may have one kind of a 4 facts and 20 dimensions, very big model. But if I expose only one fact, one dimension, assuming like this, I can only see these 2 or 3, though there are 20 available. So rest of the 17 are hidden to me. Nobody can create report on the 17 unless you expose it. So what you put onto the presentation layer is what is available to you for the reporting too. So simple things, but very, very important things for you to understand from a perspective of the OBIEE. So every word that we discuss, everything that we talk is definitely an important. So make sure that you remember all these things. Okay, now I deployed my repository using the enterprise manager. So obviously now I need to do the reporting. So how do I do the reporting? Obviously I have to go to my browser, http://localhost. After the localhost, my port is 7001 slash, what is the context here? Analytics, ANALYTICS. Analytics is my context. I say enter. So now what is that I'm doing? I'm accessing another application that is deployed onto my WebLogic, which is my analytics application. So this is my enterprise manager application. This is my analytics application. Like, yahoo.com/finance, you will open the finance application, right? You can see all the content that is related to finance. Yahoo.com/astrology, you can see all the things that is related to astrology. So what you develop there, what you see here, right? So in the enterprise manager is an application that is created for a purpose, which is for the deployment of the repository, whereas analytics is an application that is created for the purpose of creating the reports. Okay, why 2 applications? Why can't they build only one? Yeah, they can, but they thought it's different. It looks good, right? Because 2 different things for 2 different purposes, rather than setting everything in only one environment. But otherwise, security also is a problem. So I may be an administrator where I would only do the deployment part. So I should have access to only the enterprise manager. I shouldn't be having access to the reporting because I am not concerned, or I am nowhere the person who's doing the reporting. So that's the reason these are the two different things which we handle it differently. Right, so this is my Oracle Business Intelligence. This is my login page where I can log in to start creating the reports by using the repository that I have deployed. Okay, so whatever the repository that you deployed, that is the repository that is available for you for the reporting. So that is the reason when you go to the reporting, whatever the repository is currently deployed on the server, you can only see that particular repository. So at any time within OBIEE, you can deploy only one repository. I cannot have multiple repositories deployed onto my server, period. So that is one thing that you need to remember. So now, anyway, so let's get logged in and see how we actually do a report. So my user is WebLogic and the password is welcome one. So the same user WebLogic is going to work in any screen, especially on the cloud logins everywhere. You can log in with the user WebLogic because he's the super user. Okay, so this is your dashboard again. Anyway, there is no dashboard created yet, so I can go to the home page of my reporting. This is your reporting home page where I can see kind of certain reports of my previous catalog. So I see some of these reports, but anyway, those reports will not work now. Okay, so within my reporting, what I can see there's a new, or I can also see there's a create. So I can do it from here, or I can also do it from here, like a few shortcuts. So let's follow one. We'll use this one. So I say new. Within the new, I have an option to create something called an analysis. Right. So this is my analysis, where analysis is something that we use to create the report. Okay. So if we click on analysis, what is that I see here? I see a couple of subject areas. I see a couple of subject areas. See, if you compare the same subject areas that we see in our repository, I can see them here, right? So if I go back to my repository, if I see here, what do I see? I see these four, right? East, west, north, south. I get the same subject areas available, which means the connectivity between your repository and the reporting is what? Your subject areas. Whatever that you put it here, you can see them here. So any change that you want to do on the server, on the repository, come back and do the repository, but see that those changes are available in our presentation layer, so that I can do the reporting on the same thing. Okay, so that's how your reporting we should get started with. Okay, so now I go here, I click on analysis, then I can see my four subject areas. Now I can choose any one of the subject area. I cannot choose all four. I can choose any one of the subject area for creation of my report. I say click on East. Right, so this is your reporting environment. Very simple, straightforward. You don't need to write any SQL, or you don't need to write any code. All you have to do is simple drag and drop. So nowhere in OBIEE will be writing any code or any thing. But again, yes, if you have some knowledge on SQL, that is going to help you. So if you do not already have any SQL knowledge, in parallel you also just try to grab some SQL knowledge, like go to the YouTube and follow the YouTube tutorials, basic tutorials. You don't need to be an expert, but yeah, I mean, at least to some extent, because if you tomorrow if you go to the job and it's not like pure OBIEE only. So time to time you may need to deal with a number of things, right? So it's not that you cannot expect people to give you only OBIEE work. So situation to situation, they may ask you to do a little bit of SQL as well. There's a question, why do we see only 4 subject areas? Is that because there are no other repositories deployed on the BA server? No, no, no. Yeah, see, obviously, right? So we see only 4 subject areas. I told you at any point of time, we can deploy only one repository to the server. So I deployed the repository now, which has 4 subject areas, and it's showing only 4 subject areas. So you are actually accessing the repository that you deployed. It's not like, suppose say there are previously I deployed 5 repositories where these 5 repositories having 5 4 z 20 subject areas. Now I am deploying a new repository which another 4 subject areas where 20 plus 4 24, I should see 24. That is not the way it works, because at any point of time you can see only one repository, which means suppose if I deploy X repository, okay, now my work is done. Suppose say now I deploy Y repository, so now X is no more deployed, so X is no more available on the server. X is replaced with Y. So now you can see the only subject areas of the Y. Can we access multiple repositories same time? So yeah, at any given time there is only one repository. So yeah, I mean there are ways where you can deploy more than one repository, but obviously you need to create one more instance. So now I have one instance of the BI server, right? You need to create one more instance. Like that, you can create multiple instances, and for each instance you can deploy a repository. That is possible, but again your port number will change, which means you will be deploying another application altogether on the same server. Right, so now I see here, I've seen the 4 subject areas, and one of the subject area that I've decided to use is the East. Uh, okay, so I mean, yeah, good question. So what if there are multiple repository requirement? Is there, suppose now I have one repository developed for the sales. What if there is another repository required, because I cannot really build a total server and use one small repository and say that it is done. So it's not possible, right? So again, so the repository is built it in a way that you develop one repository, 10 repositories, 20 repositories, right? So you don't need to build the 20 repositories. You can handle the same repositories. That's how the structure is built. Suppose I suppose I have sales now. So assuming that this is the sales physical. Now I import the HR. Suppose if I want to do the HR, then I can build another BMM business model for the HR. I can build the um, subject areas for HR. If I say finance, I have the 100 tables for the finance. I create a new model for the finance. I can create the presentation layer for the finance. So within one repository, you can simulate multiple repositories, right? Obviously. So even if you take a new repository, what do? You import the physical, which is a tables. You create a model. You create the presentation. Same thing when you can do multiple imports in the physical. You can create multiple models. You can create multiple presentation. So it's more or less like you are creating multiple repositories, right? So the architecture is created in a way that whatever you do it on the same repository. That's how it is built actually. Right, so now let's try to create a simple report based on this repository. So now if I see it here, just a minute. Okay, so for new report development initiatives that need a new set of data, we just create a new PMM. Yeah, exactly. So if you think if I have a new changes, suppose if I want to create, if it is totally different, and if I am trying to do something different here, then I can create multiple business models. It's not a problem. You can create as many business models as you want. Suppose say on the same thing also, if I want to create a new business model XYZ. Okay, so I can create a business model XY that I can copy this offices, and I can copy this revenue. Simple. This is another model, right? If I say save, it says that no corresponding subject area. Okay. It's perfectly fine. So now I have one more subject at XYZ where it is having a different business model with a different set of tables, and I can create my own calculations. So that's pretty much possible. But again, I don't see it here now because I have to redeploy it again because I've done changes on my repository. Right. So now I have my subject area within my subject area, and I have my tables, which is I don't call as an actual tables. They're logical tables, like where I say say office description. And one thing that you need to remember is, I mean, I just since we are doing it for the first time, I simply added the keys and everything. But again, usually we don't um, we don't really pull all this unnecessary information because address key and company key, we don't really need them. They are actually hidden in the sense they are actually used in the data extraction, but we don't actually keep them here because remember one thing, um, who's accessing these subject areas? My business users are accessing. So I try to make it as comfortable as to my business users. So now if my business users look at it, they should feel like they are browsing the um, a business subject area. I don't know, a business related thing. It's not a technical thing. So if I say key and all, if I see all these keys and all, it makes no sense for them, right? So they don't know like whether they have to use the brand key or the brand. So what happens if I use this one? What happens if I use this one? They're confused, right? So we'll be creating the subject area in a way that we are keeping my business user in mind. So if a layman, a business user who doesn't know the technology, like like how people who don't know the technology use the Facebook, right? So do they know any technology? Do they know if they click on like what happens inside it? They don't care. So as long as you click on it, it get added, right? So the same way here, we make it as simple as possible for them. So kind of publish the information or create the subject areas in a way that they're navigating their business. It's not they're going through a technology. So because that's the beauty of the OBIEE, because we let the business users create their own reports. It's not only the developer who creates the reports all the time. Even a business user can log in and he can create his own report by selecting the columns from the different subject areas and different tables and with the different combinations. Because reporting is very dynamic. You can never say that I need only these 5 reports, I need only these 6 reports, or I need only these 10 reports. It always changes, right? So when my reporting requirement changes, we should be dynamic. So if I give access to my business user, he can kind of he can play around, he can experiment, he can choose the different combinations. So rather than me giving a defined set of reports to him, I give them whatever that is required as a standard set of reports, but I give the flexibility my business user to use his combination rather than waiting for a developer to develop a report and give it to them. Suppose assuming that a Sensex, suppose say I don't know Nasdaq. So if say Nasdaq is down by 1,000 points, assuming some number. Okay, so now I need a report which tells me that what are the shares that I would like to buy, because it is down by 1,000 points. I would like to acquire some shares at the lower prices. Okay, but I don't have any report. So now I make a request to these guys and say that guys, Nasdaq is down by 1,000 points and we need a new report that quickly gives me the list of the shares that I can buy, that the top 10 shares that I should buy, right? So I make a request, and obviously that goes through a big chain, right? So somebody has to approve it, and then somebody has to analyze it, somebody has to code it, somebody has to test it, somebody has to again deploy it. So there are 5 people, and there's a lot of time that it will take. Probably say on a priority basis, even if they do, they take a week. So now by the time the code is ready, by the time the report is ready, Nasdaq is up by 1,000 points. Now this report which I have requested is makes no sense now, because Nasdaq is no more down; it's up by 1,000 points. Now I need another report which tells me what are the shares that I should sell, because maybe I may be having shares which is not showing growth all these days. but now suddenly it has increased, so I should get rid of them. So those kind of, now again I need to request another report. So this is not going to work whenever there is a requirement. So that way, we are building a reporting environment in a way that it's more agile. So all you do is you choose different calculation that is required and keep the calculations there, so that my business user can play around with the different combination and see that with this combination how exactly the report looks like, with this combination how exactly the report looks like. That's how we build it. So that is the reason we focus more on our measures or facts. We build as many facts that is required, so that we'll keep it there, so that my business user can play around with these facts with respect to our dimension. So let's create a very simple report. I would like to use my brand and I would like to use my revenue. So double click on the columns, you'll get added. So this is select columns is nothing but something similar to a query. So it's a criteria. This is like adding the two columns to your query. So internally it is created as a query. So all you have to do is simply select the columns. So brand and the revenue. So what is that I'm trying to do now? I'm trying to analyze my revenue with respect to my brand. I say results. Okay, this is my results. I mean, this report is not good, but because we have not selected the aggregation, so it is displaying the individual rows. But again, that's fine to start with. So now if I click on this results, what exactly is happening? Remember, this is a query where the query is actually sent to the presentation server. From the presentation server, the query is sent to the BA server. BA server is actually understanding this query from the repository, and it is creating a physical query, and the same physical query is sent to the database, and from the database we'll pull the data, and whatever the data that is pulled from the database, my BA server is going to give back to the presentation server, where it is formatting the data and displaying the data to you in a report format. So it's kind of a cycle, a chain happens. Obviously you may not really realize it yet, but yeah, so there's a process that happens which we'll see in detail. But what happens, you don't really store any data anywhere. That is a thumb rule. So a few things that you need to remember: there is nowhere you store the data inside the OBIEE throughout the process. So I don't store the data anything inside my repository. I don't store the data anything in my report as well. So when suppose this is a report, right? I can save this report. Even if I save the report, I am not going to store any data. I am only going to store the criteria, which is the structure of your report. So what columns and what conditions, that's it. So every time you access the report, it means that you are making a request to the source and pulling the data and displaying it. It's a real time. There is nowhere you can save your report. In the sense, there is no saved reports with the data. All the reports are real time. Whatever the report that you click on, you are pulling the data real time and displaying the information. There's nothing like I run the report 1 hour ago and I saved the report, and after 1 hour I am running another report and saving it again. So I'm comparing both these reports by side by side. Those traditional reporting mechanism is no more used here. It's a real time. You go to, suppose take an example. So I want to buy some share. Now I go to some website like a money control or some website which is yeah, you can auto run reports. Yeah, you can schedule them. Yes. So suppose I go to money control or some place where I'm analyzing my data. So what is that I'm doing? I'm doing a real-time analysis. I'm just simply running through the data with a different combination. I'm deciding. That's how it should look like. So there is nothing like saved reports. They are all real-time. Okay. So click on this, then it will simply pull the data and display the data. Okay, so that's how the reporting end-to-end works, and end-to-end that we use. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up for today, and tomorrow we'll see the repository development kind of end-to-end. We'll see the online mode, offline mode. We'll start exploring more in detail. So now we have kind of this is the first layer. So we have seen end-to-end. So we have understood to some extent, but we still see there are gaps because we have not gone in depth of anything. but slowly, we'll start learning, start going in depth one by one, so that we'll start exploring more features in repository, more features in enterprise manager, more features in server. So step by step, so that it is a, gradual transition rather than pushing all those things to our head at a time. Okay, right. Any questions before we wrap it up for today? Anything that you don't understand? Yeah, yeah, you can call me. Yeah. Okay, right, guys. Then, um, Venu, the installation instructions are actually, there is an installation video that is available as part of the videos, and if you can go through the video, you can follow the instructions from the video. That's how you install.